Hello, good morning, everybody. It's 11 a.m. and we are just about to start this talk on the topic of employee evaluations. My name is Gopal Kamath. I'm a business coach and I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about one of the most common topics which affect organizations, and this is about employee evaluation. Uh, Before we start, I'll quickly explain to you how this would flow over the next 30 minutes. We would have the comments bar. Any questions you have at any point of time, please type it in there. I will spend the first 10 to 15 minutes talking about the common mistakes that we have seen during employee evaluations. And then after that, I will go through the comments and the questions which you have typed in the comments box, and pick them up and answer them one by one. Here goes. Thank you so much for joining in. And as I said, I'm Gopal Kamath. I'm a business coach, and we have a consulting firm called River Learning. As part of River Learning and as a business coach, my job is to coach business owners on dealing with the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. We've been doing this for over 10 years, and we have coached over 15 to 18 different businesses, each engagement lasting more than 1 to 2 years. We have seen all kinds of problems which are faced by businesses, and one of the key learnings that I have as a business coach is that most problems come because of the way people are hired, trained, coached, and managed in the organization. And since people happens to be one of the biggest contributors to an organization's success, I thought it's important that we talk about it. So, employee evaluation is a very common topic. Every organization has a yearly cycle of pay raises. In some way or the other, there is an assessment which happens. Some are professionally done in a documented fashion, some are just done empirically, or some are just done as a simple calculation by the business owner. But in whatever fashion, employee evaluation does happen in every organization. And what I have observed is um, some mistakes happen everywhere that we have worked with as consultants. The first and the most important point that I want to talk about, the biggest mistake which happens is the employee is never ever clearly told that this is your job. And the lack of a clear definition of what you're expecting the person to do, what you're ending up with is a person who's dealing with transactions on a day-to-day basis without a clear focus on what he's supposed to do as an employee. At the end of the year, or whenever the evaluation of the employee happens, there is a disconnect because the person says, "Oh, I did not know that you expected me to do this." Or the person is caught totally off guard saying that I always thought that I was not supposed to do this. Examples are like where the manager says you did not take initiative and solve this problem, and then the other side the person says this is not my problem, it is the problem belonging to person B or person C. So if you do not clearly define the job profile of a person, you're creating a future problem when it comes up for evaluating that employee. So that's mistake number one that I wanted to talk about. Moving further, the second common mistake which I have observed is the evaluation doesn't happen frequently enough. When I say frequently enough, once a year may not be enough. It may take much more deeper analysis for you to be able to give a feedback. 12 months is too long a period for you to wait to give a feedback to someone. Ideally, you should be doing it monthly, if not monthly, at least quarterly. And if it's so difficult, then at least do it half yearly. If you do not, if you do not have a frequent enough assessment, what happens is when you're actually doing it, say at the end of the year, what you're doing is just what is in your recent memory. So the guy might have been a star in the first 6 months, and you're grading him on what you saw in the last 2 3 months, and then you've lost the complete picture. So this is the second mistake which is often seen. It's not done frequently enough. The third mistake that I see is you do not have measurable parameters to discuss performance. I repeat, employee performance does not have measurable parameters, which means it's all subjective. It's like someone saying, "Oh, you were not proactive enough." And what is enough is left to anybody's discretion. So this doesn't work. If you're evaluating employees on the basis of subjective evaluations, then you are going to have a problem. Subjective is subjective to that person. So it's important to have measurable parameters to do a good and a transparent assessment. I know that measurable is not possible in every role, but I also know that measurable parameters can be defined for every role. You just need to study that person's job a little more in detail and get some kind of measurable parameters defined so that your discussion has a basis. That's the third common mistake which I have observed. The fourth common mistake, and this is the most, I would say the most common one. Evaluation is done only for the purpose of pay raises, and that's wrong. Employee evaluation is not to be done for doing a salary increase. Employee evaluation has to be a continuous feedback to help him deliver better, to help you communicate better, to help the organization perform better. So do not mix the salary raise objective with the employee feedback objective. Keep both separate. And finally, the fifth common mistake which I see, which I've really seen, is that managements do not invest enough in good evaluation practices, and they do not see the link between good employee evaluation and good business performance. So since this link is not seen, I have seen my clients discuss only about business problems, but when we talk about really investing time, effort into creating good evaluation practices, into creating proper employee job definitions, into creating a good measurement framework, the energy is not there. When this connect is not seen, what you end up with is only looking at the problems and trying to treat the symptoms. When you actually invest in creating a good employee evaluation process in your organization, you have created that unseen but very tight link between evaluation and the actual business performance. So This is what we have often observed. They um, the business makes these common mistakes which are related to how you are doing these evaluations, and in some way or the other these mistakes that you make are connected to the outcomes that you're wanting from your business, either in terms of how well your department is performing, or how well the company is performing, or what kind of culture exists in the organization, or how engaged the employee is. All these have, in some way or the other, a link into this. So the purpose of today's Facebook Live was to talk about this, and uh, to discuss how this is experienced in your respective organizations. And if you have any questions related to this, please do type them in the comments to this Facebook Live. I will read through the comments, and I will pick them up one by one, and we can have a quick round of sharing of opinions on this. And I hope I will be able to answer some of your queries, or I hope I'll be able to address some of the questions, unanswered questions which you have. So I would like to uh, receive questions from the people who have joined, and let's let it roll. Okay, there is a question which has come in, and this has come in from Priya Mule Khaladkar. Uh, and the question is, how do we identify parameters for support roles like HR, finance, and operations? Thank you, Priya, for your question. Um, uh, this is something that comes up in every engagement that we do, and it's a very valid question because often we do not have clearly defined measurable outcomes like you have for sales or you have for production. So how we go about this is, let's take for example the role of HR. Okay, now in HR, there are many parameters which you can define, which could help you bring some amount of objectivity in the assessment. And some of the parameters that we have worked with is, you can define the percentage of times that your statutory returns have been done on time. So if it has all been done on time in the month, you could say 100%. So there's a number over there. You can have a metric which is, the time taken to hire, average time taken to hire. So you could measure the date on which the new employee requisition was submitted to you, and the date on which the position was closed, or the day on which the person joined the company, and you have some measure in terms of number of days. So time to hire is one more metric which you can have. The third thing which you can have is, you could conduct employee satisfaction surveys, and in those employee satisfaction surveys you could have a nice questionnaire using which you can assess the engagement of the employee in various aspects. um, and you could come up with a number. You could have each question graded between 1 and 5, and depending on how the employees have answered, you could come up with a score. So that's another metric you could have. You can have a metric around the percentage of people who have left the company. It's, in industry terms, it's called the attrition rate. So the attrition rate can be one metric, one more metric which you can have. You could have metrics around trainings, number of hours of trainings conducted, uh, total number of trainings conducted. So you could cover your learning and development activity with these metrics. You could have a score in terms of the skill level in the organization. So if you have the job defined for each person in the organization, you could measure their skill levels, and you could say that as an organization, compared to the skill that we need, we are at 68% or 70%. That could be another metric you can have. Okay. So that covers HR. I mean, if we discuss your specific company or your specific organization environment, we could come up with more parameters, I'm sure. The second part of your question was finance, right? Um, Again, finance is a support function, but they could still have a number of metrics which can be tracked. The one of the most important metrics in finance, which I had developed some time back for a client, was number of mistakes made in data entry. Uh, we had this very uh, uh, I wouldn't say difficult. It was a very curious situation where we had to define parameters for the accountant in the office. And when I went into details of that person's job, I found out that doing the right entry happens to be a most important part of his job. So we said that's a good parameter to measure. And you could have minor mistakes, you could have major mistakes, right? So this can be one parameter you can measure. You could also measure for finance, what are the statutory activities that they did in the month, where all the returns filed on time. uh, was there any penalty which had to be paid? Were there any interest costs which had to be paid because things did not go on time, right? Now that's another thing you could do in finance. In finance, you can also have things like, did they present the MIS to the management on time? Did they close their books on time? Did the suppliers get paid on time? Did they send the accounts receivable to all the teams on time? So many of these activities can actually be measured. You can create a very simple set of metrics, seven or eight of them, which clearly capture finance. And if you look at the senior managers in finance, you could even have metrics like, how many cost reduction initiatives did they work on? Did they identify any internal audit issues? Were they able to identify inventory related finance? Did they track inventory well enough? Have they identified dead stock? Have they reduced dead stock? These are all things which finance can own. And I have seen organizations where these metrics actually went into uh, the bucket of what finance is expected to do, and it works beautifully. Every month the CEO gets a report, department by department, and in a matter of 5 to 6 months, when you line these up, you will see that it's so easy to assess the finance team. So that covers finance. Then talking about operations. Now, operations is a very big basket. I'm assuming that when you mean operations, you're talking about the support departments in operations, which could be like the administration team, or which could be like, maybe the logistics team, or things like that. So the same logic holds good for the operations team as well. So the operations team, uh, you will have to look at what are their key deliverables. So if you're talking about admin, um, uh, the administration, can have targets like controlling of costs related to, it could be as simple as monitoring the electricity consumption in the office. It could be related to cleanliness. You can have a cleanliness chart. Somebody can check whether the cleanliness is being maintained. I'm sure you would have seen many of these office complexes. When you actually go into the restrooms, you have those evaluation sheets over there where the supervisor comes and ticks, saying whether this was done or not. So that can be easily converted into a questionnaire, and you can assess that questionnaire. You could come up with a score. So if you help me understand operations in a little more detail, I can give you more specific ideas on how that can be parameterized. Okay. Another question which has come in from Priya Mulekhaladkar again. Um, she says, I want to also understand how to avoid the mistake and build a culture of sharing feedback, and so that it's not taken personally. How do we avoid the mistake and build a culture of sharing feedback? Okay. Um, so, uh, this process of giving feedback is always difficult, but if handled professionally, you could take the personal element out of it. Okay. um, Whenever you're having a feedback meeting, start off with the positives. The feedback meeting is not a mistake finding meeting, or not a blame, an accusatory meeting. Okay. The purpose of giving feedback is always to collectively achieve something better for the organization. The purpose of feedback is not to put someone down. So the first important thing is, in your own mind, you approach the meeting with that positive mindset, saying that yes, there have been some not so good things which have happened in the last 2 months, 3 months, whatever, but I'm not here in this meeting to only talk about that. So first step is, if you are conducting that meeting as a manager, approach it with a positive frame of mind, saying I'm not here to find mistakes. Second thing is, start the meeting by talking about the positives which have happened in that period. I'm sure you will find many areas where the person has actually done well and been able to contribute positively. Speak about those, then move on to the areas where the person has not performed well. Okay. um, Use words which convey this in a manner where it does not sound accusatory. Okay. So instead of calling it mistakes, you could start off by calling it areas of improvement. You know, the moment you use the word mistake, the person on the other side becomes defensive. You could start by talking about it as area of improvement. The second thing is, you could say that um, uh, we see that you have the potential to do it, but somehow in this period it did not come through. So, in order for you to be able to do it, is there any training, any support, any mentoring, any coaching that you need for you to be able to meet that requirement? Make it clear that the person is being trusted to be capable enough to deliver. Appear uh, in your approach to that meeting. Show him very clearly that you want to help him succeed. You want to support him in whatever way required for him to succeed. When when that comes out in your body language to him, automatically the meeting does not get taken by him as a personal accusation, but he understands that okay, there has been a gap in what he's been not able to deliver, and what it is that the organization is going to do to help him to achieve it. The moment you approach the meeting in that manner, uh, I feel a lot of the personal accusation which people feel is going to disappear. So it requires a lot of maturity on the part of the managers to conduct these meetings. So, whichever organization you're from, please make sure that your senior people understand that this background or this approach is important before they actually go and give a feedback to their team members. I hope I've been able to answer your question. Okay, friends, I don't see any other question coming into my comment box. So, thank you so much for joining in on this Facebook Live. It's been nice talking about these critical areas, and I hope you find these insights useful and you're able to drive the changes that you want in your workplaces. Thank you so much, and catch up with you soon on yet another Facebook Live with Gopal Kamath. Bye bye. Have a good weekend.